What's up, y'all? Hey, okay, so today I'm bringing to you another sewing vlog. Today I am going to alter this bridesmaid dress. This is the first bridesmaid dress that I have ever altered, so we gonna figure this out together. No, I'm just playing. I'm really excited. This is my friend's dress, and basically we need to hem the bottom of it, and we also need to take in the sides. I really wish I recorded me measuring her, like trying it on and pinning it on her body, because that would have been really cool. But I'll try to get footage of the after with her trying it on and how it's fitting perfectly, because that's what y'all want to see, right? So today the dress is gonna be fairly easy, so let me go grab it. So basically we're going to hem the bottom of the dress. Let me bring it up for you. So as you can see, there's pins in it already because I pinned it on here. So we probably need to hem this. I wonder, if I had to guess, this is like 5 inches maybe. On the sides I have it pinned as well. So I need to basically cut all of this off. This is about 2 inches on both sides of the dress that needs to come off of it. There's going to be a lot of seam ripping, resewing, and that's it. So I'm going to get started with the bottom half of the dress. I'm not going to go into great detail about that because I already have a hemming video on my page. I'll tie it to the end of this video for y'all if y'all need it. That goes in more description of how to hem. But I am going to go into good detail about the top half of the skirt. But yes, if you need the hemming video, please just pause this video, go watch the other one, come back to this one, and I got you. Okay, y'all, I'm back. So I know I said I wasn't going to go into great detail about the hem, but this dress has 3 layers to it, and I thought that was very interesting. So I was like, hey, why not do a little bit explaining? So right now, basically what I'm doing is measuring how much I need to chop off the dress. And I'm going to repeat the same process all around the dress, on the back side, on the sides, on the front, because sometimes with dresses, and depending on who is wearing the dress might need to be a little bit longer in the back versus the front, because the person wearing it might have bigger hips or a bigger butt. Sometimes if it's a very, very petite girl, it would just be the same measurement 360 around the dress. So it just depends. In my case, I really think it will be the same measurement, but you always want to check. So after you took your pinnings, after you pin how much you need to chop off from your model, you will use those pins to do your marking. So there's a pin still left on this side of the dress. Right here is my back end of the dress. So basically I took the pin, I left it in there, I took my chalk, and I marked it on the inside. From this point, you need to add seam allowance. Seam allowance for this particular item, I'm going to leave in 1/4 of an inch, only because this is a very small stitch. Literally, you're just going to roll it and stitch it around. That's not a very big hem at all. So I'm only going to leave 1/4 of an inch. So from where my marking is, the first marking, I am going to measure 1/4 of an inch. 1/4 of an inch, y'all, is literally this first line right here where my pen is. This here is an inch. This is a 1/2 an inch. This is 1/4 of an inch. 1/4, okay? Basically, we're going to repeat this step all around the dress, okay? Front, back, side, 360. Because we want to be sure that when we cut off the dress, that it is even all the way around. Or if there is a slope to it, that we know that we need to curve on a certain edge. Now, this dress has 3 different layers to it. It has the sheer layer, and then it has lining number 1 and also lining number 2. Where my ruler is at right now is where our marking is, including the seam allowance. I am going to basically chop the dress off right here. So where the sheer fabric is going to end is going to be right here. From this point, we need to shorten lining number 1 and lining number 2 after we cut the dress. And basically that's where the alteration comes in at. We want to shorten the dress. So what we are going to do is measure the difference between lining number 1 and lining number 2. And we're going to write it down in our notebook so we can remember how much to shorten lining number 1 and lining number 2. So from the bottom of lining number 1 to the bottom of the sheer fabric is a little over 2 inches. So what we are going to do is say we need to chop off 2.5 inches for lining number 1. That is including the seam allowance. So we're going to write it in our notebook. Lining 1, we're going to say 2.5 inches seam allowance. And then for lining number 2, I'm only going to measure, for lining number 2, I'm going to measure the bottom of lining number 2 all the way down to the sheer fabric. It's showing 1, 2, 3, 4 inches that we are going to chop off. So we're going to say 4 inches, lining number 2, say lining number 2, 4 inches plus 1.5 a seam allowance that we're going to chop off. So basically what I'm going to do now is continue to mark the dress. We want to make sure that our lines are straight. This dress also is a little tricky because this sheer fabric is actually bigger. It has a lot of gathers in it. So this right here is the side of the dress, and you can tell that it is actually intact with each other. So if I pull it, there's actually a lot of extra fabric in between. So you just have to be careful of that with bridesmaid dresses. Basically, there's always like extra fabric, and when you're cutting, you need to smooth it out, measure, cut before you come back to cut another end of the dress, basically is what I'm saying. So I hope that makes sense to y'all. I have a hard time explaining things to people sometimes. Honestly, I have a hard time explaining stuff to myself sometimes. That's why I like to do vlogs with y'all, because I just want to show y'all my process and how I sew things. But not in great detail to where I'm teaching you guys, because I don't want to say something and it just isn't right, you know, or I'm not communicating something the right way for y'all to understand me and y'all messing up the dress. I'm a visual learner personally, so I just can watch somebody doing it and then I can get it. But, you know, toodles. Okay, y'all, so I went ahead and stretched the dress out on my floor just because my cutting table is not big enough to do this, but the sheer fabric on top is much wider than the lining on the inside. So I went ahead and stretched it out, and then I also folded the dress in half and stretched it out. What I'm about to do is just make sure that the dress is cut evenly, She's very small and petite, so you can get away with cutting it because it's going to be the same measurements, 360 around the dress. Now, if your client had a bigger booty or bigger hips or something, you might not be able to get away with doing this because sometimes the dress needs to be a little bit longer in the back just so it can have extra room for the butt or the thighs. I also went ahead, if you can kind of see right here, I went ahead and flipped the lining up so that way when I cut, it would be even, because you can kind of tell, especially like in this area here, it is uneven, and then right here is a little bit shorter. So I'm gonna just line it up and make sure that it is even. Okay, y'all, so I just got done cutting the sheer fabric. I flipped that up and then I straightened out the lining of the fabric, and as y'all can tell, it is much smaller. So what I'm gonna do now, because the lining was a smaller length, I am going to mark 2 inches, as you can see, from the bottom of the fabric up. And this is a little bit uneven, and I'm not gonna worry about cutting it. I'm gonna just measure it from the smaller line, like as a straight line. I'm gonna use the smaller line as my guide, but then I'm gonna measure it 2 inches up and mark it, and I'm gonna mark it all the way across the bottom of the lining before I cut it out, so it can be 2 inches shorter than the actual lining. And then I'll go back and actually mark the top lining another inch, and then I'm gonna cut it off because it was 3 layers to it. So I hope that makes sense. Make that make sense, cuz. Okay, y'all, so I just got done cutting the bottom of the dress. All of 3 of these are all raw edges. So what I am going to do is go to my serging machine, and I'm going to serge all of these edges, and then I am going to fold them under and basically top stitch them, just hem them. The video I have on my channel literally explains just these steps. What's up, y'all? So the next step that we are going to do is going to be the top half of the dress. The only thing that I need to alter on the dress is the upper bodice on the sides. We need to take the dress in. So I went ahead and pinned it on my model we tried it on. I pinned it where it was way too big on both sides. So after you figure out how much you need to remove, the next thing that you need to do is, let me readjust. So the next thing you need to do is take your ruler or measuring tape, and you need to measure how much we need to remove off. I've already done this step. So for me, I need to remove 1.5 inches on both sides of the dress. What I'm going to do is remove the pins because I already know I need to remove 1.5 inches. And for this particular dress, there are just details. So we will need to seam rip this little notch right here. I'm not going to remove it completely, but I just need to detach it so I'll have room to actually work with my garment. And then when you get done, we gotta just sew it back together. It's just like a little hand stitched. So after that, we're gonna flip the dress inside out. Flip the dress inside out, and this is the seam right here that we will be working with. And it looks like this top half of the dress is actually sewn down right here. So we're gonna seam rip that open as well. And one thing that I recommend y'all to do is to take notes as you do this. So if you knew that this little side was stitched down together on the side, and if you're not going to remember to do that, just write a note in your notebook so you'll know, like, hey, this was hand sewn back down, yada yada yada. So now we have the inside of the dress. Dun, dun, dun. So what we will need to do is measure. I'm going to measure 1.5 inches from this seam in the middle. I don't know if you guys can see it because it's black. But this seam here, I'm going to measure 1.5 inches out. And then I'm going to seam rip that open. Okay, y'all, so I flipped it back to the right side just so I can check what I'm doing as I'm going. You don't want to make any unnecessary mistakes. So basically there was like extra material and stuff within the dress. So I wanted to make sure that when I'm pinning my dress before I stitch it, that I'm only pinning the area I'm supposed to pin. So now I'm about to flip it back to the other direction. And I am going to fold where I seam ripped, because I seam ripped 1.5 inches. I'm going to put basically that together, and I'm gonna pin it. We seam ripped 1.5 inches, and we're gonna stitch it down straight. So I'm laying this flat, and I am going to just make sure everything underneath is moved out of the way, so we are only working with the side seam of the dress. And underneath here we have, of course, 3 layers of a dress, so we need to be sure that that is smooth underneath, so it doesn't look bunchy after we stitch it. So I pinned it at the bottom just to hold that spot for security, but we're going to do a straight stitch all the way up on the side seam of the dress. And honestly, I am going to seam rip this a little bit more at the top just so I have room to actually stitch. Okay, y'all, so this right here is the side of the dress. This is the skirt part. This is the top half. And we are going to measure 1.5 inches that we need to chop off this dress. I shouldn't say chop off, but we just need to remove. So from the side seam, I am just going to remove 1.5 inches, which is about here, where that line is. Okay, y'all, so now I have both sides pinned, one side and then the second side, and I am basically going to do a straight stitch going down the dress. I'm going to check what it looks like after I stitch it. If it looks good, then I'm going to go ahead and do a double stitch on top of it. Okay, y'all, so this is what it looks like stitched down. It's 1.5 inches off on both sides. Before I cut, serge, do anything, I'm going to flip it just to check what it looks like. So I just got done sewing, taking in the side seam. Y'all look, it do not look bad at all. Straight down. And the next step that I am going to do is close the top hole that we cut open. I still need to do the other side of the dress, but I'm gonna worry about that after I finish this particular side. I feel like it's best to finish one side before the next, just for trial and error. Or you can do like steps, like so this side seam, so that side seam, yada yada yada. So now I am about to flip the dress back inside out. Okay, yeah, so basically we are about to sew this hole closed. I'm going to pin just straight across the top part, making sure everything is lined up, side seams are lined up, and everything is basically even. Okay, y'all. So now I'm about to just do a top stitch across, and I'm a double top stitch it so that way it can be smooth. And honestly, I might stitch it starting here, bring it down so it can be a flush straight line and it won't be like crooked. So I did a straight stitch, as you can see, going straight across. I'm about to flip it to see what it look like. If it look good, then I'm going to double stitch it and cut this extra fabric off of it so it can just have a smooth look. Okay, y'all, so it do look pretty good. I do need to, if you flip it over on this side, you can just tell that it's like a little hole right here, and you can see a little bit where I seam ripped the first time. So I just need to basically sew this down some more, and then we should be good to go. Okay, y'all, so after I get done sewing the side seams together and sewing the top back together, it basically looks like this. It looks like I need to press it down still, so please ignore how wrinkled it looks, but it looks pretty good. You know, everything is enclosed, it looks neat. But what I still have to do is alter this band. So this strap came around the waistline of the dress, and because we took the sides in, this became way too big. So what I did was that I unstitched it where it was like stitched. It was hand sewn like here and also here. So I unstitched it and I moved it over. So now this part is what is left over. And the only thing that I have to do, basically, I am going to serge this off with a serge seam, flip it over, and basically top stitch it right here in place. And then I'm gonna hand sew this back into place as well. So this is very simple. This is like the last step that I needed to do on a dress. So for right now, I am going to work on this half of the dress. I've already started pinning it basically, and I also removed the strap, as you can see from the side. Boom. So yeah, I'm gonna work on this side. Once I do this, I'll basically be done with the dress, y'all. Yay! So I took it in on the sides, basically like 1.5 inches on both sides. And then in the back, this band I had to make smaller because I took in a dress. So I made the band smaller, tacked it back in place. I also hemmed the bottom of the dress. It looked bomb.
Huge on me, so I can send you that too.
Spin around slowly. It is smart.
It looks so much better though. I'm so thankful. Girl, because there was a lot of fabric.
Yeah, it was. It's cute.
It is.